Hey y'all, I am really excited to share a live personal statement editing session with you today. I cannot wait to walk through the process that we at Barrier Breakers use when we work with our students to help improve their personal statements, to make them the very best, the most engaging, the most compelling essays that we can before they get to give them to the admissions committees who are going to ultimately admit them into law school. If you're new, my name is Alice Foley, and I am the Director of Pre-Law Programming here at Barrier Breakers. I come to this work with almost a decade of law school admissions experience, and I have been working with students throughout the law school application process for a really, really long time. I am super excited to share this sample personal statement with you and walk through all of the suggestions that I would make if it were a student that I was working with. All right, so let's dive in. And this is from a student who is spending a lot of time writing about what it is that she would like to do when she gets to law school and what it is that has brought her to law school at this point. I am really happy to say that this is off to a really good start. Overall, after I read through this personal statement, I really want to know more about this applicant. That's a good and a bad thing. The good news is that I'm really excited to learn more. The bad news is that I have to learn more. I don't have quite all of the information that I'd want to see in a personal statement. So when I finish reading, I have a clear picture of who the student is, what it is they're interested in doing, why it is they're applying to law school, all of those different pieces that go into the law school personal statement. The good news is, though, in a situation like this, where your reader is like, I'd like to know a little bit more, the fix is pretty simple. So I'm going to start at the very, very beginning. And we're off to a pretty okay start. I am a South Carolina native born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. What I first want to do, we're going to add a little comma right here, just so we have that pause. So when you're reading, I'm a South Carolina native, born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. Growing up in a low-income community, I experienced firsthand hardship and economic barriers that prevent people from cultivating a household of self-sufficiency. Just for ease of reading, I would add in a couple of little tiny things as we move through this sentence. So growing up in a low-income community, I experienced firsthand the hardships and economic barriers. I also, more broadly, want to pull this piece out right here. So right now, this is that first place where I know a little bit, but not a lot. And I'd love to hear more. And this is where being able to use narrative writing is going to really enhance the essay. If I were editing this, if I were giving this back to one of my students, what I would be doing over here is I would be adding a comment to remind them to use that narrative writing skill. Use that narrative writing to show me or show your reader what it is that you're talking about. At this point, I can think of several things that may qualify as a hardship or an economic barrier that could prevent someone from creating a self-sustainable household. But that could not be what this applicant has experienced. I would much, much, much rather learn exactly what it is that this student went through, assuming that they care to share it. If not, that's okay too. But these details and this use of the narrative writing style makes them much more compelling for a reader who is, on good days, probably reading anywhere from like 10 to 20 applications at a time. So you don't necessarily want shock and awe. You don't want them like, oh my God, I can't believe what's going on here. That's not where we want to go. But you do want to make them interested. And by interested, I don't mean you want to leave them with a bunch of questions. I mean, you want to give them information that makes them feel what you, as the writer, have been feeling, have been experiencing. Understanding the lack of resources expanded outside my home, I was inspired to get involved in the political and legal sector and dedicate my work to improving the lives of underserved communities. This is awesome. We love to see law students that are coming in to go do this type of good in the world. People that are coming to law school after having done this type of good work in the world. But again, I don't really know what that means. Hopefully later on in the essay, I will get a little more information. But one of the really great ways to draw your reader in right from the very get-go is to start with a story. So instead of giving me the broad strokes and sort of laying out the context, drop me into a story. Tell me about one of those things that you are involved in. I would love to know what that means for this applicant. Getting involved in political and legal sector means a lot of things. Working to improve the lives of underserved communities means a lot of things. That can be everything from hosting food drives to joining AmeriCorps. I have no idea what this applicant has done, and I would love to find out. Through my contributions, I realized that as an African-American woman, I provide a unique perspective and experience to the legal profession, enhancing the quality of legal representation and improving the legal system's ability to represent all individuals. This is lovely, and this may just be me. I much prefer seeing sentences like this towards the end as we're wrapping up the essay. We're bringing everything together. So leave them just a little note. As a young activist and aspiring lawyer, I have spent the last 7 years working on political campaigns and with community organizations, providing educational tools and healthcare resources to underrepresented populations, while also advocating to improve laws and policies throughout South Carolina. There is a lot in this sentence. I imagine that if I were looking at this in totality with the rest of the application, I'd have some idea of what this looks like based on the resume. But again, here it'd be really wonderful to tell me a story. Show me what providing educational tools looks like in this space. Tell me a story about someone that you met while you were doing this work and how their story affected you, or how their story drove home that you were doing the thing that you needed to be doing in this moment. You are right where you need to be in the world doing the thing that you should be doing. I would love to see that. Education access has been a mighty contributor to my growth as a leader in the community. This is lovely, but I'd love to see a little bit more of a transition and a flow here. It's a little abrupt after we're just talking about educational tools and healthcare resources. The other thing that I want to make sure that we are doing as we move along, just swap out those couple of little grammatical technical errors. Knock a capital letter out of there, replace it with lowercase. You guys are going to get a theme at this point, I think. And this is something that I talk about a lot, is show me, don't tell me. This sentence very much is just telling me. The next sentence does the exact same thing. The value of education to marginalized communities is something I've understood from a young age. Show me that. Show me what that means in your specific instance. It has allowed me to reach back and empower my village and various communities through outreach. Same old story. What do you mean by this? I want more information. You sound like you have had a really interesting time, a really compelling story to tell, and you're just giving me just the top little layer. And I want to know so much more about what it is that you are doing, because if it has driven you to law school, chances are it's some pretty cool things. And I'd love to know what it is that you plan to do with all of this experience you already have when we add a legal degree into that, when we give you the power that comes with having a law degree, that comes with being an attorney. How are you going to use that power to continue the work that you've already started? I want to know what that looks like so I have an idea and I can start picturing what the future could be like for you. My passion for amplifying the voices of the underserved motivates me to continue fighting the great fight for justice. Awesome. These are all really, really, really wonderful things, but they don't tell me a whole lot about the applicant as a person. They don't tell me what they've been doing for the last 7 years. They don't tell me what's been going on in their life. And that's just as important as having an idea of where it is you want to go after you finish law school, where it is you want to do once you've got that law degree in hand. We'll add here, again, tell me a story. Show me what this means. Details, specificity, those are your friends in here. I know that it sounds like a little scary when you only have 2 double-spaced pages to get all of this down, but I promise you can do it. Those details are going to pay off so much once you've got everything together. As an African American woman pursuing a law degree, I've experienced how legal education can offer a path to further empowerment and advocacy in a society where we face systemic challenges and discrimination. Also true. This one I'm going to put with that last sentence in the first paragraph. These are the types of things that I'd much prefer to see towards the end as you are wrapping everything up, but it's perfectly fine here as well. I'm going to sound like a broken record. Show me what this means. Our applicant says, I've experienced how legal education can offer a path to further empowerment. How? How have you experienced that? What was that experience for you? If you had to TLDR this, tell me a story. Now this next piece. Historically, African American women have stood at the forefront of issues such as civil rights, social justice, and gender equality. They have been instrumental in challenging discriminatory policies and practices that disproportionately impact people of color and other disparaging groups. Couple of things with this. First, and it's not a ton of space, so it's probably all right, but in your personal statement as an applicant, you are the center of the universe. Everything in your personal statement needs to revolve around you. I recognize you're moving through the world, you're interacting with the world. You may have family elements or friend elements or job elements that have informed your decision to go to law school, so you need to talk about them. Or it may be that you have watched someone who's important to you go through something hard that happens to run parallel or adjacent to or in and around the legal system, and that's what's drawn you to the law. That's great, but I always want to make sure, and I always want you, as you are writing your personal statements, to make sure that you are centering yourself. When we talk about larger groups, it's really, really easy to slip away from you as the applicant. One of the nice, easy sort of rules of thumb, if you go more than 2 or 3 sentences without using a first-person pronoun, reevaluate how you are sharing the information. That's when you want to make sure that you are putting yourself back into the story. I also want to grab this transition from one paragraph to the next. This is just a little abrupt. I, as a reader, want to be able to very smoothly flow from story to story as you're sharing them with me in your personal statement, from paragraph to paragraph as you are reading through your personal statement, when you've got a draft done, or even before, when you're planning how it is you'd like to write this. Think about the ways that you are going to connect each story to the next one. So here, I think we could do a little bit better. We could have a little bit stronger of a transition between these two paragraphs. Let's see. So we go from they've been instrumental in challenging discriminatory policies and practices that disproportionately impact people of color. I found myself on the receiving end, or I found myself on the affected end of one of these discriminatory policies in 2020. We're not losing any of either story, but it makes more sense and it flows just a little bit more smoothly. This is just a suggestion. If the story about the eviction doesn't necessarily go directly to discrimination, we don't have to say discriminatory policy, but that's the type of structure that you can use to connect these particular paragraphs. So from here, we're going to jump back in. I witnessed firsthand how a landlord can use their power to exploit a tenant unjustly. I stood before the judge for the first time, a public servant for social change, now a defendant, in the same position as many of the people for whom I advocated. This is starting to look a lot more like that narrative style of writing that I was talking about earlier that lends itself to creating a much more compelling, a much more engaging personal statement. We can do a little bit more polish on it though. So we talk about witnessing firsthand how a landlord can use their power to exploit a tenant. There are lots of ways that landlords can exploit tenants. There are lots of ways that landlords can be not so great for their tenants. There are lots of ways tenants can be not so great for their landlord, beside the point. But I would have a much better idea of what's happening here if I knew a little bit more about what the story was, how we ended up in court, how we ended up standing before a judge. And all of that detail just adds depth. The goal with your personal statement is to feel like a 3D, 1,000-piece puzzle, full color photograph. All of that helps build this picture for the person that doesn't have any idea who you are. A lot of the time, admissions committee members do not have the chance to interact with applicants before they have the chance to read their application. So they're coming at this with no idea who you are a lot of the time. And I will say one quick note, because a lot of the time you may be sharing something that's a little traumatic, that's a little not great. It's not something that you particularly enjoyed experiencing. And I don't want you sitting in that space. I'm going to draw attention real quick. Our writer here talks about it being a dehumanizing experience. I do not expect an applicant to completely relive these things as they share that information. I'm not saying that I need every single solitary little detail, but I do need you to tell me a story rather than just give me the broad strokes. This is not an executive summary. This is the whole thing. So here, rather than talking about what would happen in a typical scenario, for example, just tell me what happened in your case. We have this broadly. Fortunate enough to have been given a second chance. What does that mean? We get a little bit of that in the next sentence. The judge ruled to dismiss the case and firmly advised that I create a plan of action for future living arrangements. When you say that, does it mean that you may not have been evicted, but you still needed to be living somewhere else sooner rather than later? Or is this something that the court said needed to happen? Was this that it'd be a really good idea if you did this, or you have to do this thing as a stipulation of this being dismissed? I don't know that, and I would love to know how we got to that dismissal. So then we move on. This experience gave me insight into the legal system beyond the courtroom's walls. 1 year later, while in paralegal school, I landed a temporary assignment as a housing court paralegal. Instead of conceding to my own housing crisis, I used the opportunity to assist in restoring the lives of individuals facing eviction, standing before the very same judge that gave me a second chance. The connection here to the story that we started earlier on is beautiful. This is the chance to see that this applicant experienced something personally and then was able to turn around and come back into this space in an entirely different capacity, but with such great empathy for the folks that she would be working with, that she may be helping through the process themselves. This is also some great narrative work. However, it could be better. All of these things can be polished up. When you start telling your readers about having your assignment as a housing court paralegal, very broadly, you say that you use the opportunity to assist in restoring the lives of individuals facing eviction. One of the things that I love to see in a personal statement, and I know that committee members that I have worked with in the past also enjoy reading these, is if you tell me a story about a specific moment in that work. So rather than saying the lives of individuals, tell me about Mary or Stephen that you worked with. Let me know a little bit about their story as they were telling it to you. While you do this, make sure that you keep it yourself-centered, so we are seeing all of this through your eyes, but it's a chance to learn a little bit more, to feel all of the same things that you are trying to get across now, but in more depth, with more detail. So instead of using the opportunity to assist in restoring the lives of individuals facing eviction, we'll use Mary. It could say something like, a year later, I was sitting in the exact same courtroom next to my client, Mary, who was facing eviction for XYZ reason. As I held her hand and walked her once more through all of the research and work that we had done to prepare for this hearing, I could see her visibly relax as she started to internalize that we knew what we were talking about. And while I watched her relax, I knew that I had done such work on this. I felt such joy as I listened to our attorney talk with the judge, make the argument. And as the judge agreed to dismiss the case and her eviction was stopped, it was exactly like I felt when my own case had been dismissed. Something like that. That's obviously not super detailed because I'm making it up. But for someone who's experienced this thing, I have a feeling that you can write a really, really beautiful story. That'll convey everything that's here already, but in such a more compelling way. Right here, very quickly, I'm going to move out of general content and into grammar for a moment. Restoring my confidence and reclaiming my future. I get why we are calling this out as its own sentence. However, one of the funny little things about law school personal statements is that they are still a rather formal piece of writing. So while using incomplete sentences is typically fine for informal writing, here you want to make sure that you are using formal, proper grammar. In this case, this could read something along the lines of, pouring into their lives helped me begin my own personal healing journey. It began restoring my confidence and gave me the opportunity to reclaim my future. That would be a perfectly good solution. Reflecting over my short lifespan, I am in awe of how my experiences have mapped out my purpose so gracefully. I've always been a product of service, and I know that my voice and presence will matter in the legal sector. It would bring hope to impoverished communities that find themselves in crisis, reassuring them that their voices are heard, helping them regain their dignity, rebuild their lives, and create brighter futures for themselves and their families. Beautiful. What I would add, not necessarily completely change, but what I would like to see is something a little more clear on how it is, outside of just existing in the legal profession, that you hope to use your voice, how you specifically, or even sort of specifically, start to help these communities that you have expressed an interest in helping. Are you going to court with them like you were doing as a paralegal, but this time you're the attorney? Are you working on housing policy that would make it more difficult for landlords like the one that you dealt with and the one that your clients dealt with to evict tenants for no reason or for unjust reasons? What does that look like for you? Why is it that the law school experience is going to enhance what it is that you're doing right now? For this applicant particularly, with a 7-year history of already doing work that's adjacent to the legal field, I would love to know why it is now that they have chosen to take that next step. Do that one extra thing that's going to give them a little more power in the space, that's going to enable them to do more. And then I want to know what that more is. The next thing that I'm going to say may be a little controversial. And before you make your for sure decision, when it comes time to write your own personal statement, the very first thing that I want you to do before you make any call is I want you to read the directions that the school has given you. If you have listened to any of my other videos or listened to any of my other podcasts, you will know that I'm a big fan of following the directions. Most of the time, these things are not hidden. There is no ball hiding here. The goal is to make it simple-ish for you to follow the directions the law school has set out for you. Most law schools will not say specifically, you must tell me why it is in your personal statement that the school to which you are applying is the one for you. So this very last paragraph doesn't include a ton about our writer, about our applicant. We've got a beautiful conclusion above that will be enhanced by the addition of some specifics. And then you take it away and we start leading into just some simple information, some gratitude towards the school. Y'all, if I'm in the admissions committee, I probably know why my school is great. If I haven't specifically asked you to tell me, I don't need you to tell me. I would much, 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 much rather that an applicant take this extra space. Because there's a lot of space here. That could be half of a whole other story. That could be room to expand on one of the stories that's already been told and still end strong, rather than taking time. Thank you so much for reading this. Thank you so much for the opportunity to attend. This will enrich my knowledge and skill set as an advocate, but more importantly, as a law student, I wish to attend the school, and I thank you in advance. Lovely. This is not necessarily the place for that. If a school has specifically asked you to address this in your personal statement, absolutely go ahead. Again, I am not crazy about it being the very last thing that you do if there is another place to put it, because I want my students, I want the applicants to finish as strongly as possible. Drive home why it is I, as an admissions committee member, am reading this essay. Show me why it is that you need to be in law school. Show me why it is that you need to be in my law school, without having to take time to say, these are all the reasons that your school aligns with the thing that I want to do. Schools that are really, really interested in that often will give you space to write that in an entirely separate essay. Use your personal statement to focus on you. We have done what is a fairly typical first round of essay review. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, or share it with a friend. Talk soon.